Okay, welcome to the next of the revision videos for the Power and Conflict section of the poetry. This is the extract from the Prelude by William Wordsworth, written in 1850, so nearly 200 years ago now. Hopefully by the end of this video these three images should help you remember some of the key ideas and quotations for your exam. So first of all, what happens in the Prelude? Well, this is a real-life story about William Wordsworth when he was younger. One summer evening, the narrator finds a boat tied to a tree, and he steals the boat. He rows it out into a lake, and he's really proud and happy and enjoys doing that. However, there is a big mountain that looms on the horizon, and it scares him, and so he rows back home again. And back home later on he remembers what he experienced, and something important has happened, something in him has changed, and he wants to work out what that is. So a reading of the Prelude would be, just to remind you, one summer evening, led by her, I found a little boat tied to a willow tree within a rocky cove, its usual home. Straight I unloosed her chain, and stepping in, pushed from the shore. It was an act of stealth and troubled pleasure, nor without the voice of mountain echoes did my boat move on, leaving behind her still on either side small circles glittering idly in the moon, until they melted all into one track of sparkling light. But now, like one who rows, proud of his skill, to reach a chosen point with unswerving line, I fixed my view upon the summit of a craggy ridge, the horizon's utmost boundary. Far away was nothing but the stars and the grey sky. She was an elfin pinnacle. Lustily I dipped my oars into the silent lake, and, as I rose upon the stroke, my boat went heaving through the water like a swan, when, from behind that craggy steep till then the horizon's bound, a huge peak, black and huge, as if with voluntary power instinct, upreared its head. I struck, and struck again, and growing still in stature the grim shape towered up between me and the stars, and still, for so it seemed, with purpose of its own, and measured motion like a living thing, strode after me. With trembling oars I turned, and through the silent water stole my way back to the covert of the willow tree. There, in her mooring place, I left my bark, and through the meadows homewards I went, in grave and serious mood. But after I had seen that spectacle, for many days my brain worked with a dim and undetermined sense of unknown modes of being. Over my thoughts there hung a darkness, call it solitude or blank desertion. No familiar shapes remained, no pleasant images of trees or sea or sky, no colours of green fields, but huge and mighty forms that do not live like living men, moved slowly through my mind by day and were a trouble to my dreams. So here are some key ideas in this poem that will help you talk about in a sophisticated way. If you look in the booklet that you have, the first is coming of age, for example, the idea of being able to do what you want without any limits, becoming a man or a woman. And if you read through those, there is a chance to apply them to the story of the poem. The first has been done for you. This is a coming of age poem because it tells the story of a boy going out on his own at night for the first time. So if you could try in your booklet, pause this here and write a sentence using each of these to talk about what happens in the Prelude. Okay, what we're going to do now is go through some of the key quotations in this poem, starting with this one, which is one summer evening I was led by her, the first line. So first of all, summer. This is the season of leisure and of new discoveries. It's a very positive season to set this poem in right from the start. There is personification. I was led by her. Who is this her? It's ambiguous. We don't know. It could be nature, perhaps, showing her power right from the start. And in fact, because we always say as much as we can about a line of poetry, that I was led. This is a verb in the passive voice. It shows how nature has the power to make the speaker go wherever she wishes. Secondly then, I unloosed her chain. This is another key quotation from this poem. Excuse me, I'll try and make sure all of this goes in here. This key image starts with the pronoun I. So when he unlooses the chain, it shows the speaker trying to gain control. This is him calling the shots here. There is also, of course, the symbol of the chain. The chain can represent something. It recalls prisons. It makes us think about being trapped. And so this is the speaker coming of age. He's trying to break free and go where he wants to go. And last of all, the verb unloosed. I don't think I've ever heard that word before. It sounds quite clumsy to me. He's trying something new, and so perhaps he's not that good at it yet. You loose a chain. Why you would unloose a chain, I'm not sure. So he's trying to do something new. Then a huge peak, black and huge, and then there's a little space in this quotation, upreared its head. Well, this is personification, isn't it? We're talking about a mountain. It doesn't have a head. So the huge peak seems to be watching him. This poet's personified it. The adjective black has lots of connotations, lots of things we associate it with, such as darkness and the unknown. So the speaker doesn't know what is intimidating him about nature, but something certainly is. And then there's repetition of huge, a huge peak, black and huge. Maybe this shows nature's power. It's vast, and it makes the boy feel small and vulnerable. And then last of all, at the end of this poem, the huge and mighty forms that moved slowly through my mind. Well, this adjective huge is here again. It reminds us of earlier, the mountain peak, the black mountain that's haunting him. What is this mountain? Well, the semantic field of heroes, words to do with heroes, battling huge and mighty enemies, makes this sound like an epic battle between the speaker and nature to try and take control of his destiny. And it's ambiguous right to the end what these forms actually are. If it's looking down on him stealing, maybe the mountain could represent his parents judging him for doing something wrong. Perhaps it could represent nature herself saying, you know, there are certain things that we should and shouldn't do. It's certainly a very powerful symbol of nature. So making revision cards or a mind map, you might want to try and remember these quotations. We'll be testing you on them in the coming lessons. And finally, if you're gunning for a higher grade, you might want to look at a particularly ambiguous, complicated image, such as I dip my oars into the silent lake. This is very unusual image. It's very sensual. You could link it to the phrase troubled pleasure to show that the speaker's really enjoying doing something transgressive, something against the rules, but he's also intimidated by his actions and quite scared. All of those complicated feelings at the same time. So this could represent the complex nature of breaking boundaries and rules and doing something new. It always produces these very strong mixed feelings. Finally, this adjective at the end, silent, it's the silent lake, could emphasize the solitude of the speaker. When you are trying something new to depart on your own, you're on your own, and he certainly seems very solitary at this point in the poem. There are lots of other ways to see this image. Some see this as a poem about the loss of virginity and the fact that the oars and the lake are representations of something sexual. And so that is another way to read this poem. There are lots of ways to see nature in this poem, which is why it's so famous and so celebrated. I hope that was useful, and the next video in this series is the Emigre, so please do check that out.